Hi, doing another video, getting back to what I usually do. So in this video I'll be talking about how the 1994 draft played a big part in the 1999 St. Louis Rams Super Bowl team. So, let's get started. I wrote this all down on a piece of paper, so I wouldn't miss anything. So let's start this off. Obviously, Kurt Warner went undrafted out of Iowa State in 1994. Then he got picked up by the Green Bay Packers, and then he was famously cut by them. Then was out for a few years. Then he was a bagger at a Hy-Vee store, and then he got picked up by the Rams. He didn't get signed by. He wasn't taken in the expansion draft from the Browns, and now we all know the story. He went on to greatness in St. Louis and Arizona. But in '99, he went to the Pro Bowl, was NFL MVP, I believe, and had first three games. I think it was the most passing touchdowns for the first three career games, and he had 325 completions, 41 TD passes, and a passer rating of 109.2, and had 4,353 yards passing. That's pretty damn good for your first season. Next up, we have Jay Williams, who went undrafted in 1994. He didn't start any games in '99, but he had 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 36 tackles altogether. In the playoffs, he had 4 tackles. Next up, we have kicker Jeff Wilkins, who played a very big part. He went undrafted in '94. He had 4 tackles. He was 64 for 64 in extra points. He was 20 for 28 in field goals. But the thing is about that, he would kind of struggle from the 40 on. He was 1 for 5 for stuff from 50 yards plus. Excuse me, I think if I missaid it just now, 1 for 4 from 50 plus. And in the Super Bowl, he had 3 very crucial field goals that helped the Rams stay above the Tennessee Titans, because at the beginning of the game they couldn't really get anything muster going on offense, and he was the only one really getting points on the board. He scored their first 9 points. Next up we have Keith Lyle. I hope I said his last name correctly, so forgive me if I didn't. He was the 71st overall pick by the then Los Angeles Rams before they moved. Due to an injury that I could not find out what it was, he was limited to 9 games, started all of them. He had 2 interceptions, 58 tackles, and 1 sack and 1 tackle for loss. He was also voted to the Pro Bowl that year, one I think of 2 or 3 Pro Bowls in his career. He had 8 tackles in the playoffs, so that was a big part. He was a leader on that defense. Next up, we all know who this is. Marshall Faulk, who was traded in the offseason to the Rams for a 3rd and 5th round pick. Bill Polian, even though he got Edgar and James, I think you still could have got more for Marshall, like a 2 and a 4. Like, that would have been a much better. You don't give Marshall Faulk away just for a 3 and a 5. For crying out loud. And then he proved everybody why. At the time, only one player had ever had a 1,000-yard season. That was Roger Craig. Forgive me, I can't remember which season that was. I think it was '84. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But in '99, he had over 1,000 yards. He had 2,000 yards from scrimmage, 1,000 yards receiving, 1,000 yards rushing. He set 2 NFL records in that year. Was also voted to the Pro Bowl, of course, and was named All-Pro. Next up, we have Isaac Bruce, who was selected, I think it was in the 2nd round, I want to say, 33rd overall pick. In those days, with the picks were different than today's. Anyway, so that year, he had 77 receptions for 1,165 yards, and a team-leading 12 touchdown receptions. He had the game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl, that famous one where Kurt just heaves it and he catches it behind, and he stops and catches it and runs through the defense, or runs through those 2 guys. And last but not least, we have undrafted DeMarco Farr, who went, as I just said, undrafted in '94, had 8.5 sacks, was voted to the Pro Bowl that year. Also had 4 4 forced fumbles, 80 tackles, and 11 tackles for loss. In the playoffs, he had 1 sack and 24 tackles in the playoffs. And now another fun fact, 5 out of the 7 Pro Bowlers on the 99 Rams were from the 94 draft. That being DeMarco Farr, Keith Lyle, Kurt Warner, Isaac, and Marshall. So that 94 draft really helped those guys out. Without those players, I don't know if they win that Super Bowl. I don't even think they go to a Super Bowl for another 20 years. Who knows? So, if you didn't know that, now you know, and I hope you enjoyed this video and this rundown.